So as we were sitting there together on the beach, I said, Jab, we've got to share this story too, what God's done for us today. I said, our Highland family's got to hear this. God has done amazing things for us today. The Melanesian Bible College was an idea that Joe Cannon started back in the 1970s. A lot of the older Highland members will know Joe Cannon. And it was his desire to spread the news, good news, to people of Papua New Guinea. And I believe starting in 1996, the Melanesian Bible College started with Jab Mesa and his wife Becky. Jab and Becky Mesa are the heart and soul of Melanesian Bible College. Jab is someone who is respected everywhere he goes. People know him.
Love and greetings to you, our family island. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your prayers.
So we went in 2017. Kim and I went back in 2019 with Jay Shapley and Rance Reagan and Randy Gadding.
The reason why I went to Papua New Guinea is because I actually love mission work. I feel that's where I'm most alive.
It was such a pleasure to go there 5 years ago because it's just so cool when you're a Christian that you can go to the opposite side of the world, to a country that in so many ways is so different from what we're used to, and immediately bond with brothers and sisters there.
What I appreciate about Papua New Guinea, and the first thing that I noticed when I was there, and that is the Bible school that Highland supports there.
Highland is pretty much the sole supporter of Melanesian Bible College. It's been an agreement for a number of years, and so it's an important use of our dollars.
We charge you to go forward with the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Like strong and bell, blue pla, long you pla mas, walk about strong, one time good news.
When they sing with everything they've got. What you picture heaven would be like when people are singing. And the relationships that we've built, like with his granddaughters, with Jab's granddaughters, we got really close last time.
The church families that we meet there, that really was inspiring to me. I noticed the camaraderie there, a support group. In my opinion, it's kind of what it took me back to what the intent was when God established the church and Jesus established the church, to be there for one another, to have that common goal, to help one another run this race.
There's a school there on the property. Jab and Becky live on the property. Potential students are identified from various regions, whether it be the Highlands or down on the coastal cities, and they're invited to the school with the goal that the students graduate, that they make their way back to their own home villages and become someone there who is trying to build a church.
Because I think the model was correct. You had missionaries going in and training the people who lived in Papua New Guinea, who then took over the school, did the teachings, and it's just multiplied itself because as they trained preachers, preachers would go into the Highlands, they'd go into the islands, they'd go into the coastal areas and train other preachers, and therefore it's grown exponentially.
But I can tell you, we're eyewitnesses, that the school is doing awesome. Again, there's second and third generation Christians now being converted, and so it's exciting. The plan was to try to keep going back maybe every 2 or 3 years, but COVID hit. So I can't believe it'd been 5 years. So we started planning this trip last fall.
I had been to Papua New Guinea before, so I was definitely eager to go back this time.
So when I went 5 years ago, it was just one of the real treats of my life, and had been really looking forward to going back. In my personal case, I decided to fly on Delta. The other 3 people that were going this time, which would be Jimmy, Kim, and Randy, were on United. So I was going to leave a day before them. I went to the airport on Saturday, set my luggage up on the thing to weigh it, and the guy goes, "Your flight's been canceled." Turns out they couldn't get me on Monday's flight. They couldn't get me on Tuesday's flight. And at that point, I knew there was no point of going because I would have already missed 5 of the 7 days there. So it was apparent, for whatever reason, it wasn't meant to be that I was going to be there.
Tami Island, you can Google Tami Island, it's T-A-M-I. You can Google Tami Island and find it. Tami's got a population of about 500 people, we're told. About half of them are related to Jab in some form or fashion. There are a number of places he spent time growing up, but he spent significant time on this island. 2019, we got to meet Jab's father, who's since passed away, but we met him. He lived on the island. So there's that connect of family as well as Christians.
It's a beautiful commute from the mainland over to Tami. So that's what I remember there. And like I say, it's just a beautiful adventure there. And then obviously going to see the church fellowship with one another and really encourage one another.
Originally, we were supposed to go to Madang. That was the plan. We were going to go to Lake. We were going to have a fellowship meal, and then we were going to go to Madang.
So you get there by van or bus. There's no sea travel.
I had mentioned how much I enjoyed Tami and loved being there and, wish we could go back. Well, when we got in the van from the airport, they picked us up at the airport, and I said, okay, what's the plan? What's our agenda for this week? And Jab said, well, we're going to have our fellowship meal, and then we're going to go to Tami. I squealed. I was so excited. And he said, and my granddaughters are going to go with us. So that was just like the ultimate, to be able to spend time with the girls and with Maureen and Ruth were going to go, and for us to just have that time to go and worship with the people and visit with the people there. So that's how we ended up going to Tami instead of Madang.
On Friday morning, 12 of us met down at the port there in Ley. There was a lot of cargo already in the boat. I call it a banana boat. It's not that big. It's got a 75 horsepower motor. And so to put the cargo and 12 of us in, that's probably enough.
So it typically takes on the boat that we go, I would say roughly about 3 to 4 hours. We would be able to see land, the main land, as we travel. And then we'll shoot out like an L shape, kind of go out to the ocean and then route back into Tami Island. That's typically the map.
You never really get far enough from the mountains or the mainland. We're probably a mile or two offshore. But the water, because the proximity to the mainland, is relatively calm. And so the 3 hours that we rode from Ley to the tip of the mainland, calm. It rained a little bit, but other than that, there was really very little wind. I mentioned I wish I had a pair of skis behind here,
I remember us having somewhat light rain, nothing that was different from a couple of years the trip that we had taken. Light rain, some visibility, but we would be able to see the mainland.
So we stopped at the end of the mainland 3 hours. At the time, when you look to the southeast of the mainland, you can see Tami Island. Now, you've got water everywhere on the horizon, and it's not like there's the land. It's like there's the land over there. You can see the treetops, but you can see it. And so the visibility was good, and we headed towards Tami. It's supposed to take about 30 minutes. It's about 8 miles, and they say it'll take maybe 30 minutes. We were probably about 10 minutes from the mainland toward Tami, maybe getting close to halfway. And that's when this unexpected weather moved in on us. And it moved in quickly.
I knew something was different from the last trip 5 years ago with the boat ride. We didn't expect to see land, but due to visibility, it just seems like there was a vibe that came across. And at that moment, man, these waves seemed to be getting pretty rough. and the rain seemed to come down a little heavier.
And this is where I make the point that there's no one to blame in this accident that we had. That weather was so unexpected. I mentioned that there were some first century fishermen who got caught unexpectedly in the water. And so there's no one at fault here. But what happened was visibility was gone. None of us could no longer see the island. And you cannot, I mean, it's thick fog now. It's raining sideways.
I remember a swell right in front of us. Our boat went down into the swell, and as it seemed like it was coming up, that's when a wave actually came up front in front of the boat and really all at once dumped its whole body right there in the boat.
It happened very quickly. Within probably 30 seconds, and the boat with our cargo and the number of us in there, it really took one big wave.
Jab, who was actually steering the boat, he did give everybody notice. I remember him saying, everybody grab something. Our boat is going to sink.
I remember when the boat was going down, Jimmy looked at me and he said, we're in trouble.
Now, it goes underwater, so what happens to the boat? The boat sunk. Everything that floats, including the 11 of us, went to the surface. At the time, we weren't even wearing life jackets. We had them at our feet, but that's how quickly this happened.
At that moment, I remember asking in kind of a light, faint voice, will someone pass me one of those life jackets? Someone, I can't remember, actually threw me a life jacket, even though it didn't have the straps on it to snap.
So we're all scurrying for life jackets and anything floatable, anything that'll float.
So by the time I got the life jacket on, we were all in the water at that moment.
The boat goes down, we go up. Over the next few minutes, the weight of the motor kind of just turned the boat vertically. So now you've got about maybe 3 feet of the tip of the boat floating out of the water. The rest submerged, but it didn't sink to the bottom of the ocean. We were congregating around the tip of that boat. The waves and the number of us around the boat, that wasn't working. Like one wave would hit you and move you 10 or 12 feet away from that boat.
Notice my first challenge with the high waves were that I was really drowning without being underwater.
There were some buoys that were attached to the boat with rope. And so I was holding on to those and the rope got tangled around my feet. And so I started feeling it pulling me under. So when I got away from the ropes, Jimmy had kind of drifted.
I remember Jimmy encouraging everybody to try to stay together. It was encouraging that I heard Jimmy speak to his wife.
He looked at me and he goes, you and me, we stay together.
Stay together and try to have something to float on.
There was some flooring in the bottom of the boat. I'll just call it plywood. It's about that thick. And it wasn't floating on the surface of the water, but it was floating about half a foot below the water. So 3 or 4 remained over there by the tip of the boat. The remaining group, we made our way over around, so we at least each had a hand on this piece of plywood. Now, the two groups, we slowly kind of started drifting further from each other over time. And so now we're in 2 groups.
I don't know who started singing to Jesus. I thought I heard 3 of the teenagers that were on board begin the song. I guess I wanted that to be a part of my song if it wasn't.
When we went in the water, I know all 11 of us started praying. I remember praying, God, you've got to calm this storm, calm these seas, because these current conditions, we're in big trouble. Nobody's going to find us. The situation we were in, you can't sugarcoat the situation we were in for a period of time.
The waves were, like I say, really beating me in the face. And at that moment, I knew you're going to have to try to deal with this.
Job's granddaughters had a really tough time.
to the point where maybe only the tip of their face was out of the water. I remember a couple of times Becky just kind of slapping the cheeks of one of them, just kind of, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Really the only thing Jab was using flotation-wise was that plywood. So Jab was beginning to go under and come back up and beginning to struggle.
Meanwhile, we were all in the water, looking out for each other. And you could feel the presence of God. I mean, He was there.
What's happened is we're not in the water where we went in. The ocean current has actually moved us several miles northward, and we're actually headed toward the open sea.
I did tell myself, I'm like, well, even if you survive, aren't there sharks out here?
Did the idea of sharks come into my mind? Yeah. I mean, we're out in the South Pacific and north of Australia. And the other thing was the sun begins to go down. You're really just south of the equator. And so you've really got an even number of hours of daylight and darkness. And so literally after 5 o'clock, it starts getting darker. So in my mind, I tried not to go there, but I also thought, while we were out there, I thought, there aren't very many more hours to be found before it's dark out here.
So being in the water for a couple of hours, actually, several things were going through my mind. It was the reality that since I seen no land, I started to have serious conversations with God. The good conversations I had with God was, I'm so thankful that I'm saved. I told God, this seems to be how we're going to meet face to face.
And so when the boat went down, he looked at me and he said, I love you so much. And that scared me because I was thinking, is this going to be the last time? And I also thought about my granddaughter that's to be born January 8th. And I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to see my granddaughter. And that was something that was just hard. It was hard to take in.
Yeah, it's not a situation you imagine yourself being in, and you kind of think, how will I react if I kind of think maybe this is the end? But I was at peace. I was more sad than anything, just thinking about my boys. As quickly as those thoughts came into my mind, God, I just felt the warmth and presence of Him, and it was real.
I did ask God for salvation from the water for one reason. 2 months ago or longer, I had just lost my brother. He died. I'm a family of 6. We're all very close. And since he had passed a couple of months ago, I did ask God if He would spare me. Would He do that because I knew it would be hard on my family to have to say goodbye so soon. And I did not want them to hurt like that.
As I look back and as I remember things, the moment that happened, I saw Jesus. I sensed His presence. I know everyone wants to do it, but for me it was like, it's the length. Hey, I still have a lot for you to do. Hang in there.
That's when we started trying the phones.
I have this special plastic fanny pack, and I had put my phone down in it. And so I got it up, I took it off and got it up and got my phone out. And Jimmy had his phone in a Ziploc bag. I was holding my phone up and I was trying to open it because you have to slide the little bar. And my fingers were wet and it wouldn't let me slide. And so God put it in my mind, Siri, you have to use Siri. And so I said, Siri, call Dee Dee, my sister who's back here at the house. And the call went through. And Jimmy, at that same time, he had called.
And the phone rings.
I had spoken with Jay Shapley recently, so I went to recent calls and at least was able to hit the button recent call.
And I look at my phone, it says Jimmy Atkins. So the phone works great to Papua New Guinea.
Jay answers, "Hey Jimmy, how are you?" And I said, "Jay, our boat has gone down."
And my first response was, "Jimmy, are you messing with me?"
I said, "No, Jay, I'm serious. We are between the mainland and Tami Island." The reason I thought of Jay was supposed to be with us, but Jay was with us back in 2019. I knew he knew, maybe one of the few stateside that knew the proximity of where we might be.
And we talked another few seconds. It was less than a minute, so I guess my feelings immediately were, how quickly can I start praying about this? And what am I going to do? I'm on the other side of the world, 13 time zones away from Papua New Guinea, trying to get help in Papua New Guinea.
We weren't off the coast of Miami or Pensacola Beach. I mean, we were literally in some of the most remote areas of the world, literally. So I spoke with Jay, and Kim had spoken with Christy, and I think that's when Christy started calling my brother.
It was a very panicked call. Kim wanted me to call Jay. I did call Jay immediately, and he had just gotten off the phone with Jimmy. One thing that happened that was probably the most miraculous is your phone is working in the middle of the ocean. It's wet, and the phone was still working. I can't get my phone to work sometimes in my own house. So we talked a minute and basically both agreed to do what we could, Google things.
I Googled emergency services in Papua New Guinea. All right, I'm thinking, Papua New Guinea, they're going to have a person there, a real person to answer the phone. What a disappointment. Just like the United States, I get a recording.
I think Jay and I both called the same agencies.
So I'm working my way down Google.
Pretty helpless feeling from this end.
I call that number and I got a human being. And then I continued to explain to the best I could where their location was. And at that point we hung up. I talked to her for 7 minutes.
One of the things I thought to do was I ended up texting the elders on a text group. And I told them kind of what was going on, what I knew. And I knew the best thing I could do was get as many people praying for the situation as I could.
I know it was probably a helpless feeling stateside, but at the same time, you guys started praying for us. And over the period of the next part of this story that you'll hear is how your prayers were answered.
We decided that we needed to get in touch with Abraham, Jab's son. Jab's son was back in Leh.
As much as everyone stateside was trying to help us, our real chance is to let someone locally, someone in the area know we're in trouble.
Of course I didn't know the number, so Becky, who was by the boat, she started yelling the number to Jimmy. And Jimmy was having to memorize this 10-digit number. So I would say, Siri, call. And then he would say the number.
At the point Abraham found out, he contacted someone at the end of the mainland where we had been, and he contacted Tami Island.
Hearing some conversation, I knew the church had known or message had gotten to the church.
I think God was active in the whole thing. Again, the prayers that were being sent, and I just prayed for their protection. And
in the meantime, the weather had gotten better.
God would send his angels to surround them, and that, we could get them safe.
I noticed birds that were flying above the air, kind of just like swarming or circling around us.
And then this boat,
I remember saying out loud, I hear a motor, I hear a motor.
a fishing boat, they were fishermen.
The fishermen had explained that they actually seen the birds.
The people have said birds do not circle people. They know scuba divers, they know fishermen. And they also encountered around us, there were dolphins that had been circling us.
my understanding is that shark and dolphins really don't like to be in the same area. So, God helping us.
And so these fishermen, they came up and they saw the boat and all of us floating in the water. So they started pulling in Randy and Maureen and Ruth. Not even 5 minutes later, from the other side, here comes Willie.
Willie is one of Jab's uncles.
He starts pulling us in the boat.
To hear Kim tell the story, Willie was much larger than life that day.
He came in that boat and he was standing there and pulling us out of the water.
And we have pictures that we took, and he's about my size, but to her that day and to me, he was a superhero. At that point, the rest of us are pulled into the boats.
Probably the hardest part of the whole thing was just the wait. You know, not knowing. It was about an hour and a half, I think, before we actually knew they were okay.
But the sense of relief was absolutely overwhelming.
Once the boat docked or pulled up, if you will, I remember getting out of the boat, and I remember Jimmy with his hands out. I just wept.
We had been in the water over 3 hours, so our ordeal lasted over 3 hours in the water.
And knowing the story now, I really don't think that what we did from this end actually accomplished much other than the prayer. The most effective thing that we did, because none of the people that we contacted, none of the boats that were sent were actually part of the process. So, you know, that made me think that God was very active in the whole situation.
The fact that the birds were circling them, the fact that they were found not through the Coast Guard or the United Nations or the American consulate, but a fisherman coming off of Tommy Island, sure sounds like a God thing to me.
When we were on the island, after we kind of got calmed down and everything, and I kind of walked out towards the beach, actually looking kind of in the direction we had been, and Jab comes over there and kind of puts his arm around me, and we just kind of sit there for a few minutes. I said, Jab, God has done amazing things for us today. I mean, things that we read about that I've never experienced, that none of us have ever experienced. He spared all 11 of us. And I mean, God's got more work for us to do. And so to God be the glory for what he's done for us today.
Oh, I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. Oh, I'll never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the heart.